Good morning, everybody. Today is Tuesday, and welcome to Penn Vicarage on this lovely morning. Great to see you, and I'm glad you could join us for our Bible talk today. My friends, we are working our way through the Gospel of Mark. Now, like I told you yesterday, the Gospel of Mark is a tale of two halves, really. There's the first half, which is Jesus doing preaching and doing miracles and that sort of stuff. And there's the second half, which is all principally about the cross and the resurrection and so on. And what happens at the end of chapter 8 is he pulls his disciples together and he explains to them what's about to happen, that he's going to go to Jerusalem, he's going to die on a cross and rise again for us. But as you can imagine, quite a bit for them to take on. But he's just told them 6 days before this morning's reading that this is going to happen. And then, so to say, 6 days later, we have this incredible scene, the famous story of the transfiguration. I have to say, for many, many years, I didn't understand this at all, but I think I've got the measure of it now. It's a peculiar reading, all about Jesus transfigured, and I'll tell you what that means in a minute. When you think about it for the first time, it's almost tempting to think, what's he been smoking when he dreamt this one up, Mark? But anyway, it's amazing reading. I can't wait to share it with you. So without further ado, here we go. Mark's Gospel, chapter 9, beginning at verse 2. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John, led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it's good for us to be here. Let's make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He didn't know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice, "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." And suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. As I say, a strange reading, but an absolutely brilliant reading. And I just want to say 3 things this morning. Firstly, again, continuing the theme, which comes through Mark's Gospel again and again and again, the importance of recognizing who Jesus is and seeing the signs and reading the signs of what's going on here. So what goes on in this reading this morning, pointing towards the greatness and the messiahship of Jesus? Firstly, where does it happen? He takes them up a high mountain. Now, in the Bible, a high mountain is the place where Moses went to get the 10 Commandments from God. Going up a high mountain is sign that God is doing something very special. A bit like he went up the Sermon on the Mount to get those teachings. It's all again referring back to Moses going up the Mount Sinai to get the 10 Commandments. It's a sign that God is doing something special when they go up a high mountain. You're supposed to read the sign there, high mountain, code for the close presence of God. Secondly, you have a cloud here. And again, a bit like the mountain, it's sign for the close presence of God. In the Old Testament, when the people of God went across the desert before they went to the promised land, they were led by a cloud of pillar by day, a pillar of cloud by day, and a pillar of fire by night. In other words, the cloud is sign for the guidance. Again, the close, what's called the Shekinah glory, the close presence of God. So again, so you've got the mountain, presence of God. You've got the cloud, the presence of God. Then, who appears to, they go up this mountain, and then you've got two people on each side, one person on each side. You've got Moses on one side and Elijah on the other. The slightly interesting question is how they knew it was Moses and Elijah, considering there were no photographs in those days. We do not know, but somehow they knew. You've got Moses on one side and Elijah on the other. And these weren't just 2 Old Testament people drawn out of a hat. Moses, they were very, very special people. Moses represented the law of God. And he was on the one side, and Elijah represented the prophets on the other side. So you've got the law and the prophets. And the Old Testament, the scriptures, was all about the law and the prophets. And who's in the middle of Moses and Elijah? You've got Jesus. In other words, the whole of the law and the prophets, the whole of the word of God, the whole of the scriptures are pointing towards Jesus. So far, you've got the mountain, you've got the cloud, you've got the prophets. Then you've got the shiny face. Now, transfigured is a funny word. The Greek word is metamorphosou, from which we get the word metamorphosis. And it means for something to change. So when Jesus is transfigured, it means Jesus is changed. It's the same word, metamorphosis is the word when a chrysalis becomes a butterfly. It's the same creature, but it gets somehow changed. And Jesus is changed before them. And his face lights up. Now, interesting, in the Old Testament, when Moses met God, Moses' face shone, but it was reflected the glory of God. It was God's light. His face reflected the glory of God. In Jesus' case, of course, that didn't happen. He didn't need to reflect the glory of God because he is God. So his face actually shone. So rather than being reflected glory with Moses, you've got Jesus' face actually shining. Again, another thing pointing towards the presence of God. So far, we've got the mountain, we've got the cloud, we've got the prophets, we've got the shining face. And if that's not enough, voice from heaven, big G comes out in words of almost entirely one syllable and spells it out for you. This is my son, the one I love. Listen, to him. In other words, if you haven't got it through the mountain, the cloud, the prophets, and the shining face, God spells it out for you absolutely abundantly. This is my son, the one I love. Listen to him. So again, the first thing you can see from this amazing reading is all these signs pointing towards Jesus being the main man, Jesus being the main event. So again, just when you read it next time, just hear those signs, just see those signs and see what's happening in this reading. That's what it's pointing to. Abundantly clear, the person of Jesus. That's the first thing. Second thing I want to say is, who is this for? And I've changed my mind on this in pretty much the last 24 hours, really. I used to think that this event happened to give Jesus encouragement before he went to Jerusalem. He knew he was about to go to Jerusalem. He was about to die and rise for us. And he knew this suffering was coming, and he knew he was going to have to do this. And I've always thought, actually, that God did this incredible thing to give Jesus encouragement just as he's about to enter this great phase of his ministry. And there may have been something in that. But if you read the text carefully, I don't think it was for him. I think it was actually for the disciples. He said he was transfigured before them. In other words, I think that the people who are meant to see in this were the disciples. I think the encouragement, the message, was actually for them to hear. I think this message likewise is for us today. Because I think Jesus knew what he was doing. Jesus was a man on a mission. He knew what he had to do, and he knew why he had to do it, and so on. But for the disciples, they just seen Jesus do some incredible things. And they saw all these things pointing towards Jesus being the main event. But they were then, very shortly afterwards, they were about to see this Jesus crucified and die. And that wasn't the Messiah they were expecting. They were expecting everyone expected some Messiah to come and boot some great big military person on a great big white charger somewhere, to go militarily kick out the Romans. But Jesus didn't do it that way. Jesus instead laid down his life for us, and he died on a cross. And my guess is that later, or perhaps even during the event, when they were trying to work it all out, what's going on here? How can we make sense of this? A crucified Messiah, or put another way, a crucified God? How they're going to work it out? I think this will have been a great help to them later on. So I think the encouragement here is not so much for Jesus. I think the encouragement here in this is meant to be for us, just to remind us again, when we think about the crucified Jesus, just who Jesus is. But I think there's one more little thing. Because this incredible thing happens, and you've got Jesus there, and you've got Moses, Elijah. And Peter, bless him, does what the Church of God has done ever since. Lord, shall we build 3 houses, whatever? Shall we, one for you, one for Moses, and for Elijah? Can we build a church here? Can we build something over the top of it? Can we hang on to the moment? Can we keep it here? Can we hang on to this? Can we stay here? And I think the answer to the question is, sadly, we can't. And I think the church always tries to do that. And I think we often try to do that, but we can't. The presence of God is a wonderful thing. And actually, when you have an experience of God, obviously stay with it as long as you can. It's great, isn't it? And enjoy it and remember it. But don't kind of make it, don't monumentalize it, if you know what I mean. Let's not put monuments there. The Christian life has to be lived, not kind of memorialized. Great things happen to us sometimes. But it's important that when we remember them, but actually the Christian life has to be lived, not just stuck into a monument. We can't stay where we are. The Christian life has to be lived. God's as much there, will be as much there tomorrow as he is today. And we can enjoy the presence of God, enjoy what God does for us. But actually, we shouldn't stay there. It should actually be as an encouragement to live it out in our lives. They couldn't stay there, and Jesus couldn't stay there. Jesus had work to do, and the disciples had a gospel to spread. And great things happen to us sometimes, and we can enjoy them, and it's right that we remember them. We must remember when you feel God close to you, then please remember it. Write it down, put a knot in your hanky, remember it, because and think of it as encouragement, but don't kind of stay there forever, because you can't. You can't go back to where you've been before. Actually, it's important that the Christian life is lived. God is just as much God now as he was 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 500 years ago. And they couldn't build 3 booths, because it wasn't, you can't stay there. You have to move on, and the Christian life has to be lived out in the real world. More tomorrow. God bless you. Have a lovely day.